It took some of the country's top architects to design Balboa Park, but the vision of an urban park for San Diegans and visitors came from local pioneer and entrepreneur George Marston in the early 1900s. What Marston probably never envisioned was having the U.S. Navy move into the park during World War I. Balboa Park is charming, lovely, and full of history. It hosted two expositions in 1915 and 1935. All but three of the original buildings were built to be temporary structures for the first expo. Incredibly, with a few exceptions, most of the buildings lasted 80 years before requiring any major reconstruction. Architect David Marshall has extensive knowledge about Balboa Park buildings. So the buildings, when they were built, were temporary. How long were they supposed to last for, or they expected them to last for?
Only about 18 months, basically 6 months prior to in the 1 year of the exposition. Of course, the exposition was extended a second year, and after that, people loved the buildings so much they decided to keep them. But the problem is they didn't have any concrete foundations. They were just sitting on wood platforms in the dirt.
Through the years, the park has had many uses, including as the Naval Training Station. Yes, the Navy rented the space from the city to train thousands of sailors.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, but in 1917, 1918, during World War I, this was San Diego's first naval training center. It was called Naval Training Station, and they had up to 6,000 sailors here, average age 19 years old, and they were getting training for about 3 months.
David has collected nearly 2,000 photos, postcards, and other ephemera of Balboa Park. His architectural firm has reconstructed many of the original buildings. Because of his interest, he's also written a book using historic postcards from his collection so that San Diegans can learn and enjoy San Diego's past.
And what was great timing-wise is the 1915 exposition that built all of these great buildings had ended, and so they were all empty, and World War I broke out in April of 1917, at least for the United States involvement, and they said, well, here, Balboa Park's ready, let's use it. And they actually took very good care of the buildings. They were very conscientious. They watered all the plants, they trimmed it up, they kept the buildings painted.
Hard to imagine, but there were thousands of sailors training in Balboa Park. They would march up and down the Prado, as this historic photo shows. The sailors also learned water skills in the lily pond.
They called them blue jackets, and they just brought them through. They actually trained the naval aviators here as well, but they trained all the different all the different aspects of what they needed to learn, and they tying knots, swabbing the decks, and the swim training, of course, and the lifeboat drills.
David has other historic photos that show life around 1917 during the Navy's time at Balboa Park. This is the Plaza de Panama. At the time, it was an open space for visitors to enjoy. Of course, it looks very different today.
If you were here 93 years ago when it was a naval training station, you would have had to dodge bayonets, because this is where they were doing the bayonet drill. And there's great photographs of this entire plaza filled with lunging bayonets.
Oh, wow. Totally different from what it looks like today. So you're saying also that they plan to remove the cars and bring this back to what it looked like from the beginning?
Yeah, it's been in the master plan for over 20 years to get cars out of the plaza here, because it is meant to be a public space. And it's really one of the only, it's the town square, really.
David says the Navy used just about every space and building during their stay at the park. Historic photos show how sailors spent their time, whether it was training or enjoying some downtime.
There's some images that show not only the Navy, hard at work doing their drills and things, but there's a couple others that show a dance, a Saturday night dance, where you can't even see the ground of the Plaza de Panama because it's so packed with people. And then there's also, they had put a temporary boxing ring out in the middle of the plaza, and they had boxing matches. They had all kinds of activities going on.
There's another photo that shows the Navy's pennant, formed by about 3,400 sailors at the plaza. Despite their training, it seemed there was always enough time for the sailors to write about how much they enjoyed San Diego. Those historic postcards are now part of David's collection, included in his book. You have a photo postcard of this exact location we're standing at.
Yeah, it's looking down the arcade here, and it's a bunch of sailors from 1917. It's actually dated December 4th, 1917, and it's showing them where they're relaxing away from the drills in this beautiful arcade. And the sailors really loved it. I have a lot of postcards from that period, and the messages on the back are, "This is such a beautiful place, and we really love it here." And it worked out perfectly.
The Navy would spend only a brief time in Balboa Park. and Navy officials would later look for more permanent stations like MCRD and the Naval Training Center, what is now called Liberty Station.
How long did the military stay here, and why did they decide to leave?
Well, they were here for almost 2 years, and it was basically the end of World War I when they decided to, close shop. And, it was at that time when they were considering a permanent home in San Diego. And we have the saving grace for all these beautiful exposition buildings that have remained and been reconstructed is that there wasn't a large body of water in the park, because that was the only thing that kept the Navy out of the park permanently.
The next time you visit Balboa Park, know that thousands of sailors trained, ate, slept, and danced at Balboa Park, a park that has kept its charm and beauty for nearly a century.